In video 8, we established the measurement system. 3 indices: encounter index, likeness growth, and community attachment. 3 time points: pre-retreat, exit, and 90 days. The principle that governs how you read the data. Low scores are a rail problem, not a people problem. But here's what video 8 established clearly. The 90-day measurement depends entirely on something that happens before the participant leaves the retreat. If the local pastor hasn't been briefed, if the participant has no daily practice, if nobody has a scheduled check-in, the 90-day measurement won't happen, and the liberation will almost certainly fade. The 90-day follow-up isn't a measurement exercise. It's the most important rail in the entire model, and this video shows you how to build it so it holds. Here's what happens in the first 72 hours after a seeker goes home from a camp or retreat. They return to the same room, the same family, the same school, the same pressures, the same relationships and the same devices, the same internal voices, all of which haven't been to the retreat. The environment hasn't changed. The relationships that contributed to the wound haven't changed. The patterns that the infection drives haven't changed. The seeker has changed, but they're now the only person in their environment who has. If they return with 3 things in place, the liberation has a strong chance of taking root. If any one of the 3 is missing, the odds of the liberation lasting past 30 days drop sharply. The 3 things are: first, a local pastor or leader who knows what happened and is prepared to follow up. Second, a simple daily practice of honest conversation with Jesus that they can sustain at home without any special equipment or setting. Third, a scheduled 90-day check-in so the liberation is documented, followed up on, and the seeker knows someone's still paying attention. These 3 things aren't a bonus. They're the load-bearing rails of the entire model. And all 3 must be built before the participant walks out the gate. Let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. Hebrews 10, verses 24 and 25. Meeting together isn't optional maintenance. It's the condition for sustained growth. The local pastor and church community aren't a supplement to what happened at camp. They're the soil the liberation needs to root in. 2 are better than 1 because they have a good reward for their toil. If they fall, one will lift his fellow, but woe to him who's alone when he falls and has not another to lift him up. Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verses 9 and 10. The person who falls alone stays down. This isn't a spiritual metaphor. It's a practical description of what happens when a seeker who received liberation at camp encounters their first significant temptation or setback with nobody around who knows what happened. The community rail isn't soft support. It's survival infrastructure. Bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. Galatians 6:2. The burden of sustaining new freedom is real. The daily rhythm, the resistance of old patterns, the occasional doubt about whether the liberation was real. These aren't signs of failure. They're the normal experience of a person whose liberation has taken root in a world that hasn't yet been fully redeemed. The local community carries these burdens alongside them. Each rail is specific, buildable, and verifiable. Leaders should be able to confirm all 3 for every seeker before departure. Rail 1, the local pastor briefing. Before the seeker leaves, ideally before the final session, the retreat team makes contact with the seeker's local pastor or church leader. Not a general update, a specific briefing. The briefing covers, with the participant's permission, what area Jesus moved in during the retreat, what the participant committed to doing differently, and what the 90-day check-in will look like. A local pastor who receives a specific briefing becomes an active participant in the liberation process. A local pastor who hears nothing receives a participant they have no context for. They can't follow up on what they can't see. Rail 2, the daily rhythm card. Every seeker leaves with a simple laminated or printed card that gives them a 5-minute daily practice they can sustain at home without any special setting or equipment. The card has 3 elements. A 1-sentence honest prayer about the specific area Jesus moved in during the retreat. A scripture to read slowly and sit with. 1 verse, not a chapter. A brief listening prompt. Jesus, what do you want to change in me today? 5 minutes, every day. Simple enough to actually do. This is the daily conversation rail. Step 4 of the 5-step journey. Now practice daily at home. Rail 3, the scheduled 90-day check-in. Before the participant leaves, a specific date, time, and person for the 90-day check-ins established. Not, we will follow up in 3 months. A name, a date, a method of contact. The check-in is conducted by the local pastor or group leader, not the retreat team, using the 90-day section of the participant growth measurement instrument. A participant who knows a specific person will check in with them on a specific date is a participant who carries accountability forward into their daily life. The scheduled check-in is itself a rail. It tells the seeker that what happened at camp was real enough to follow up on. All 3 must be in place before departure, not 2 of the 3. A seeker who has a daily rhythm card but no local pastor briefing will fade when the first hard week arrives. A seeker who has a local pastor briefing but no daily practice will have community without a personal anchor. The departure gate rule. No seeker leaves without a local pastor briefed, a daily rhythm card in hand, and a specific 90-day check-in scheduled. If any of the 3 is missing, the rail is incomplete. The local pastor briefing is the single most important external rail in the model. But most retreat leaders either skip it entirely or deliver it so generally that it produces no change in how the pastor relates to the returning seeker. Here's the language that makes a briefing effective. Local pastor briefing. Pastor Neil, I'm calling from Coastal Hope Retreat. John was with us this week and has asked me to give you a brief update on what happened. Jesus moved specifically in an area of unforgiveness or a pattern he's been struggling with. He's committed to, and then named John's specific next step from question 7. He's leaving with a daily practice that takes about 5 minutes each morning. We've scheduled a 90-day check-in on and give a specific date. We'd be grateful if you could stay aware of how he's doing in this area over the next few months. And if anything significant comes up, we're available. Is there anything you'd like to know or anything about John that would help us follow up well? 3 principles behind this language. Precise without violating confidentiality. In general area, not specific details. The participant controls what's shared. Get permission before the briefing call. Actionable for the pastor. Tell them the next step and the daily practice so they know what to look for and how to encourage it. Invite the pastor into partnership. The final question opens the door to information the retreat team doesn't have. A pastor who's watched this seeker for years may have context that significantly affects how the follow-up should be shaped. If the participant doesn't have a local pastor, this is itself critical information. Connecting them to a local church before they leave isn't an add-on, it's an emergency rail-building exercise. A participant without a local pastor who leaves a liberation retreat is very likely to see their gains fade within a month. What happens when the 90-day check-in comes back and the scores have dropped? The seeker who left camp with a strong EI score and genuine encounter with Jesus is now back to where they were 3 months before, or worse. First, this isn't a theological failure, and it isn't the participant's fault. Liberation is a journey, not a one-time event. The 5-step model says so explicitly at step 5. The liberation that begins at camp is the beginning of a process, not the completion of one. When scores drop at 90 days, ask the diagnostic questions from video 8. Did the daily practice actually happen? If not, the practice was too complex, or the participant had no accountability for it. Simplify and add accountability. Was the local pastor actually briefed? If not, the participant returned to an environment with no one who knew what happened. This is a process failure, not a participant failure. Did the participant face a significant setback in the 90 days? A relationship crisis, a family conflict, a relapse? If so, the question 7 step wasn't specific enough, or the community rail wasn't strong enough to hold when the storm came. And then, what's the next step for the specific seeker? If the daily practice lapsed, reconnect them with a simpler version of the practice. 1-sentence prayer, 1 verse, 1 listening moment. Restart the daily rhythm without making the lapse a moral failure. If community is missing, this is the most urgent intervention. Connecting them to a specific person in a local church is the most important next step. Don't offer more retreat programming as a substitute for community. If a setback occurred, the setback's not evidence that the liberation wasn't real. It's evidence that the rails weren't strong enough to hold when tested. Return to the 5-step map. Identify which step needs more time. The most important thing to communicate to a participant whose scores have dropped is this: what Jesus started, He's still committed to completing. This isn't over. This is the journey. Liberation takes root over time. The 90-day measurement isn't the final verdict. It's a progress report. And every progress report gives you information for building stronger rails. A retreat ministry that measures, responds to the data, and improves its rails is a ministry that produces increasingly lasting fruit. That's the goal. Before the next video, your preparation assignment: build the 90-day follow-up kit before your next camp. Not afterwards, before. 3 components. First, the daily rhythm card. 1 page, printable, simple. 3 elements: honest prayer, scripture, listening prompt. Design it for the specific context of your participants. Second, the local pastor briefing template. A 1-page guide with the language from this video that your team can use when calling local pastors on departure day. Third, the 90-day measurement form. the community attachment and likeness growth sections of the full instrument, formatted for the local pastor to administer and return. If you build these 3 things before the camp begins, the 90-day rail is already in place before the first seeker arrives, and that changes everything about how the model runs. Build the rails before you need them. The time to build a rail isn't when the seeker's walking out the gate. It's before the camp begins. One video remains, and it asks the question that the whole series has been building towards. How do I train others to run what I know how to run? Because the soul liberation model's designed to be reproduced. Every component we've covered, the 5 steps, the 7 questions, the 4 liberation areas, the measurement system, the 90-day follow-up, can be taught to a local pastor who's never attended a Coastal Hope retreat. Video 10 shows you how. And it's the video that turns everything we built in this series from a training you've completed into a movement you're part of. This is Pastor Keith from Coastal Hope Retreat and Apollo Tiburon, Cebu, Philippines. God's best in mind to you as together we join with Jesus, fulfilling the Father's mission to bless all peoples. Hope to see you here, there, or in the air.